remember that spiritual warfare exists. And there are lies that the enemy likes to tell us. And one of those for me was, you don't have people around you. So when I believed that I didn't have people around me, I wasn't seeking help.
Welcome to the first season of the Pink Fish Podcast. I'm your host, Haley Hofstetter, and I am so glad that you are here. The Pink Fish Podcast is a Christian living podcast that focuses on casting the light of Christ on women across the world. This very first season of the Pink Fish Podcast is about transitional seasons in life. We will learn about how to lean on the Lord and seek Him as your constant, even when life isn't exactly what you're used to. So, let's swim right in. Lindsey is one of my good friends that I've met here since I've been in Nashville, and it's just been so sweet getting to know her. And so, Lindsey, why don't you tell our listeners just a little bit about yourself and who you are?
Yeah, really, my name is Lindsey. So I moved down to Nashville for school in 2018. And after graduation, moved down full-time in summer of 2022 and have been here since then. And in that time have kind of went through some seasons of looking for community, looking for Christ-like community, and in one of those many blessings that God has provided in that time, had the opportunity to meet Haley at a small group. It's been really lovely to get to know you, Haley, and really grateful for a new friendship, to find a sister in Christ who's pursuing the things that God has in store for your life and for just different ways to love others.
Oh, Lindsey, that's so sweet. So you mentioned that we met kind of like at a small group.
Mm-hmm.
So what Lindsey's talking about, for those of you who don't know, is we have a friend named Haley who actually is so cool. And she hosts a Bible study at her house on Thursdays. And she just kind of posted it online. She told some people about it that she goes to church with. And people just started showing up. And Lindsey, you found out about it online, right?
No, I actually didn't. So I think the long story short is that I showed up to a different Bible study that I found online. And one of the ladies that was there that day invited me to this Bible study. She had made a comment like, hey, if you're looking for community or somewhere to get plugged in, I've been attending this Thursday night group and would love to have you join if you're interested. And I showed up, and it's been really great.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that later, and like just what a blessing that community is and how important that is to incorporate something like that into your weekly or monthly routine.
Yes.
But before then, Lindsey, something that we're doing on the Pink Fish Podcast this season is we are asking those who we are interviewing just kind of like what the Lord has been teaching them right now, so that we can gain wisdom from the wisdom that the Lord is sharing with you.
Yeah, so I think that's always a great question, because the Lord is always teaching new things to all of us. And as we, every person has a different background, different present, different future. And so where one person may have learned a lesson 5 years ago, somebody else may be learning it right now. And I think a couple of the big lessons that the Lord has really been teaching me in this last year and a half of living life post college. One of them has really is a big overview, and it seems so simple, but just keep pursuing Christ. I think there are different ways that He asks us to do that. There are different ways and seasons that he kind of pushes us to keep choosing Him. And one of those things for me has been, actually need to spend some time in prayer and spend some time in the Word on a regular basis. It makes a huge difference in my life. So there's that aspect of discipline. But then another aspect that has come has also just been that the Lord is faithful. I think He's shown Himself to be faithful in many different ways throughout my life. But I think one of the main highlights has really been it doesn't matter what my life looks like, how I'm feeling, what I desire, have, don't have, who is around me. God is faithful. Period. It isn't contingent upon anything. It's not contingent upon whether or not I feel a certain way or whether the people around me look a certain way or anything. God is faithful. And He continues to pursue us. He continues to pursue relationship with us, really no matter what. And so, as I have kind of been in a season of transition, God showing His faithfulness through His steadfast character, and always being who He is, and allowing me to ask questions and allowing me to sit and be joyful or grieve or whatever it may be. The Lord is faithful. And I think that has really been probably the most overarching thing. There's a difference when you talk about things that God is teaching and lessons that you've learned or are learning. I think there is a difference between kind of head knowledge and heart knowledge. And it's maybe one thing to say, yeah, I've seen the Lord's faithfulness, or yes, I know that He is faithful because that's one of His character traits. But when He really kind of keeps poking at you and or reminding you, hey, it doesn't matter. I am that really has just been such a blessing for me to be able to learn a little bit more in this season. As I think that has helped in my journey as I continue to learn what it means to trust in the Lord. Again, it's easier to say things than to do them sometimes. And He's patient.
That's so good, Lindsey. Thank you for sharing that. And I feel like if we just stopped right here, we'd already have a great podcast. That was so wonderful. And I feel like that correlates with a lot of things that the Lord is showing me right now. And I think kind of the focus I've been given right now is He has been faithful, and so He will continue to be faithful. And just dwelling on what He has done in the past, and because of the things that He's done in the past, I can use those to remind myself, like, whoa, He will continue to be faithful. And Lindsey, you're a Kane fan, aren't you?
I actually have been listening to them more this week than I have in a long time. I don't know. I was up on Spotify and was like, why not? They have nice, happy music.
That's so good. Well, I love Kane. And I'm actually seeing them in concert in a couple of weeks. But one of their songs, the lyrics are, yes, he did, so yes, he can. And I just feel like that really, I don't know, that kind of sits with me right now and what the Lord is having me dwell on. So that's so cool.
I agree. I think that might have been the song that was stuck in my head like all week.
So, Lindsey, as you know, this season we are talking about transitional seasons of life and change. And this podcast season is going to come out in the spring. And the spring is a time when a lot of people go through different changes, job changes, graduating school, just different things like that. And as you know, one of the reasons that I asked you to be on this podcast is because you're in a really unique position in life right now. You are in a season of waiting, but also a season of transition. And so I think that you have a lot of wisdom to offer to our listeners. And this podcast actually stands out from a lot of the other ones that we're doing in this season because you're actually in this right now. So the other interviews that we're hosting is people who have been through this season and are kind of advising us after the fact. But I'm really looking forward to what you have to share being in this right now. So I'd love for you to share with us kind of what your college experience looked like and the transitions from college to you graduating and being an adult now in a different social situation and all the things.
I think as an overview, I moved away for college and attended a small Christian university. Size reference, I think undergraduate was around 3,000. At least at the time, may have changed now. I don't know.
You could name, because I think a lot of the people listening are actually going to know about the school that you went to.
Yeah, I went to Lipscomb University, so so I went to Lipscomb University and I studied English with a concentration in professional writing, which I know different people have different stories in terms of even just their college days of whether or not they transferred universities, or they changed majors and whatnot. That isn't entirely my story. I went to the same college all 4 years. And yes, 4 years. I did not graduate early, not necessarily late either. Just your average 4 years. And then I went in wanting to study English. Had not decided on a concentration or anything like that. So that maybe a little bit was my trying to figure things out. But by the end, I graduated, yes, with a Bachelor of Arts in English concentration in professional writing. Truly just means more technical, less creative writing, more of, hey, what does proper, quote unquote, proper English look like? And how can we help businesses and different entities write in very clear ways to communicate with our audiences? So that background led me to an opportunity to work in the marketing department of a company that works in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry, which is very different from what I studied and very different from kind of my own family background, so to speak. Prior to attending college, I truly had absolutely no idea what engineers did. And now I'm surrounded by them every day. Including my roommates are engineers.
Yes.
And so it's truly 24/7. I'm surrounded by engineers, and that is. I just would have laughed if you told me that like 5 years ago. I wouldn't have done that. There's a little like, hey, you never know what's coming, because I certainly didn't. I think everybody has things like that, but yeah, I guess what I imagined I would be doing, and one of the reasons I looked at colleges in Nashville is that I was really interested in the Christian publishing industry. And next to New York, which is not necessarily a place that I can foresee myself living. Nashville or somewhere like Chicago are probably some pretty big locations for specifically Christian publishing. So that's one of the things that brought me to the city, and it's definitely what I had envisioned and what I had hoped, at least early on, to be pursuing. And in all honesty, it's something I'm still interested in. But it's not the steps that the Lord had for me initially. I did not expect to go into this industry to be surrounded by engineers 24/7. And I also didn't expect to work on a marketing team. It's also not what I studied. I contemplated marketing in undergrad and actually took a couple of marketing courses, but really was not quite what I had expected it to be. Looking back, I know that's probably more because it's traditional marketing what I had studied versus some of the options that are out there. But when I got closer to actual graduation, so my last semester of college, I started looking at kind of three different paths. Two different paths? Two different paths. Two different paths. And one of those was very vaguely anything that had to do with writing and editing. I'd found that I really enjoyed editing. So I kind of was looking for any positions that included quite a bit of that. And then the other path was archives. I'd done an internship in our university archives and just really enjoyed it with history and working with tangible objects, working with people. But I really, really enjoyed that. And so when it got to the companies that were interested in interviewing me, I was kind of looking at two different technical companies that do writing and editing, and then an archives adjacent position. And I was honestly kind of convinced that I really wanted to go into the archives adjacent position. I really thought it would be a great opportunity to step into that field despite my background not being in history. And I got all the way through that process. There were a lot of things that seemed really great. But then I got to a stage where they offered me the position. They asked me on the spot if I wanted the job, and I said, I'm literally walking down the hallway to an event right now, and I graduate in 2 days. Can I please have some time to think about this? There's a lot on my mind right now. And she said, I'll give you 24 hours. And I said, okay. And I hung up and I was just processing everything. And less than 24 hours later, I got a call again from them saying we need an answer right now. And I told them, you didn't give me the 24 hours that we had agreed on. And they just kept pushing. And I was really in a lot of kind of anguish about it. I had in my mind that was an opportunity that would be really good. It would help me to step into a different field or just something that seemed great. The closer that I got to actually walking into it, the more God started kind of throwing up red flags and saying, no, this is not it. One of the things that my mom likes to say is, unless it's actually a life and death situation, if you're putting pressure on me to make that decision, then it makes me feel like I'm not making the decision that's wise.
Yes. So, that's really good.
Yes. And ultimately, I ended up saying, I can't do this if this is it wasn't even just pressuring to give an answer. It was also pressuring to start like 2 or 3 weeks later, which I was not in position to do given my living situation at the time. So ultimately, it really just was not lining up. And I said no without having any backup. I couldn't do it, and had a lot of kind of anxiety over that of, okay, Lord, I feel like you put up enough things in the situation to say, hey, this is not it, don't go down this path. And I really wanted to know what the next step was. Like, okay, that's fine, Lord. if you don't want this to be the path, can you show me like the next step on the next path? Because I'd really like to know what that looks like. And
Yes.
yeah, that's something he's still working on with me because I kind of feel like that now still a little bit. Although, I mean, we'll get to that later.
Yes.
And you know, the Lord is faithful. He's faithful no matter what the outcome of the situation. And in this case, he provided another opportunity where everything that had gone wrong in the previous job situation went right. I took that in between time between, saying no to this and having another opportunity to actually interview with somebody to really sit and pray and go, Lord, I want to walk in the way that you want me to go, but this really quick pressures and various other things just, this is not it. Lord, would you just provide a path that's clear? And even though it felt unexpected in terms of what I thought I wanted, the Lord was patient with me. And he provided even subtle comments that the people that I talked with about, hey, like, take the time that you need, tell us when you can start, and we'll work with it. I gave them the furthest out date as I thought was feasible, and they didn't have a single problem with it. And that was a huge difference. I think sometimes even still walking into things, it's a little bit like, okay, am I making things up? Like, this is right? Like, I don't think it's wrong. But the Lord is faithful, and as we continue to pursue Him, we are imperfect. We cannot do things perfectly. It's why we are not God, and it's why we need God, and it's also why we are not Jesus, and we need Jesus.
Yes, amen.
And the world ruled by any of us would not run very well. It really doesn't matter who we are. And so really just pursuing hey, Lord, help me. I want to what you have for my life. And I don't know what that looks like because I don't have the bird's eye view. But make the next step clear. And sometimes, well, not just sometimes, but even looking at the people around you who are also following the Lord and asking, hey, does this seem right to you too? There's a place in scripture where it talks about, it seemed good to the Holy Spirit and it seemed good to the people. I have to look that up exactly, but it was, like electing a new elder, something to that effect. And the answer wasn't, written on the wall of this person is the next elder, but they came together and they prayed and they asked the Lord, and everybody was in agreement. And sometimes decisions are like that, even as scary as that feels. As someone who would, in my ideal world, like to know what the next step is. That's not what the Lord always has. Sometimes He does, but it isn't always how He has it.
Lindsey, thank you for sharing about that and just kind of like the journey that brought you to finding a better job for you at the time. If you could you update us kind of where you are now in that position and how you're feeling about it now versus how you were feeling at the beginning?
So right now, in all reality, I am actively looking for a new job. I have applied to several jobs and had an interview, but I'm in a waiting and holding pattern. So it's a bird's eye view. That's where I sit right now. But Haley, to your question, what got me to that point? A lot of things, and not all at once. So I've now been in this position for right about a year and a half. And I will say that I never thought that I would be in this position long term, even in terms of a question of locationally, will I be in Nashville long term? I still don't know the answer to that. Only the Lord knows the answer to that. But even that as an aspect of going into the position of, okay, Lord, I feel like this is clear that you're asking me into this right now. But I don't necessarily know that I want to do this for all of life. And so the first maybe 6 to 10 months was really good. There have been a lot of things that have been really good, but there have also been a lot of things that have been really hard. So I think some of my story, as we talk about transitions, there's a difference between somebody who has just graduated college and they're stepping into a season of everything is new, a new place, new people around you. You're starting to even figure out, like, what does it look like to keep the kitchen clean? I mean, like, basic stuff here sometimes. And it's different for everybody. Some people live in an apartment in college, some people don't. Some people have a car, some people don't. For me, I lived in the dorms and I did not have a car. Oh, I know my thought. My thought was the difference between, like, somebody who's in a stage of a lot of transitions in their life as a whole. For instance, having just graduated college, but also people who are, say, transitioning jobs, but they're not moving. Their family and relationships are consistent. That is, those are different experiences. Neither of them are necessarily right or wrong. They're just different seasons of life. And I found myself in the former season rather than the latter. And so I think some of my journey to the position that I'm in right now of looking for a new job is not entirely, it's not solely because of my experiences in the job that I have, although that certainly has played a role. Some of it has been growing in relationships. We talked earlier about community a little bit. When I first came down here to live full time, I had a couple of good friends that I moved in with, and a small handful of people that were remaining in town after graduating, but not a large group of people. I think a big contribution to that was COVID, and I know a lot of different people have different experiences with that. But one of those for me was that I knew a lot of people prior to COVID, and by the time I graduated, I didn't know very many people anymore in my program. Just the community that I had kind of slowly dispersed. One of the things that I really struggled with initially in this transition was finding community. And so in terms of how that relates to my job, I knew when I stepped into this position that it was a secular workplace. It is not a Christian company, and I did not get the impression that any of my coworkers necessarily were Christians, although I didn't know that. Don't always just talk about Jesus immediately, even if you do follow him. But kind of as I started to get to a point after a few months of getting into new routines, getting into rhythms, and Getting past the training stages and really into what it looks like to work that job full time. Getting to know my team, getting to know the people in the office and the company, it became pretty clear that there really were not very many, if any, Jesus followers. And out of an office of over 100 people, that felt really lonely. So I battled a lot with, and to some degree still have, struggled against wanting to be able to be there missionally, to show Jesus as well as I can to a group of people that very clearly are not following Jesus. And when I say that, I don't mean just I'm picking up on clues. I mean, these are overt statements that people have made to make it very clear that they have no interest in Jesus. That initially was one of the hardships, and has continued to be. There's a difference between being fully surrounded with believers and being surrounded by people who want nothing to do with the Lord. And for probably the first time in my life, I truly was submerged in that environment. I grew up in a Christian home. I went to a Christian school really all throughout my schooling, and had an interest in working in a Christian company. Or at the same time, I kind of knew that might not be what the Lord had for me. And ultimately, it wasn't. And so part of that transition for me was learning what does it look like to try to love and show the love of Jesus to people who aren't interested, who have a different definition of a lot of things that I know to be true from Scripture. So initially, that was a main hardship. When we think about transitions, we think about learning probably about 6 months in. One of the ladies on my team announced that she was leaving, and while that's not abnormal, somehow it just kind of hit me of, oh, this is how it happens in the adult world. People can just decide that, hey, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yes. So I'd love to ask you a little bit about that, actually.
Yes,
I think there are a lot of people who do get a job out of college that they just end up having to take because maybe they need the money in that moment, or maybe they're focused on other things, and so getting their best job is not a priority at that moment, or maybe they need more experience or something like that. But for whatever reason, a lot of college graduates end up taking a job that they just don't like at the beginning. And so I'd love your input on what is the difference between, sitting there and just trying to make the most out of the position that you're in, seeking contentment. And then what is the point where it's like, okay, it's time to move on now. Like, I need to find something else. Can you help us make that distinction?
Yeah. For me, there's a lot of prayer involved. Because I really didn't want to read too much into something that I wasn't meant to read into. I probably knew for 4 to 6 months that I would probably come to a point in the next year that I would want to start looking for a job. And that kind of came from circumstances within the company in terms of really just kind of not aligning with my own beliefs and not aligning with my own priorities, and just kind of feeling like, oh, we're not going to get along long term if we have completely opposite priorities in life. As much as I wish I had a very clear answer, the line between when I was feeling like, yeah, I'm probably going to be looking for something, but I don't feel like I'm there yet, to, okay, yeah, I'm looking, was very hazy. I started casually looking for things, and then at some point just started applying. I don't know that there's a cut and dry answer for everybody, in that everybody's situation looks different. There's different reasons that people come to that point of, hey, I don't want to be here. Sometimes it's a toxic work environment. And if you were to ask some people that I work with, they would be like, this is the best thing since sliced bread. And for me, it does not work. And we have different personalities and we have different priorities. Without going into any form of like moral implications of those things, like, I mean, it's understandable that one answer is for one person is not necessarily the exact same answer for everybody.
Yes, that's very true.
The main thing that probably helped me flip the switch from I'm casually looking to, okay, I need to try to get myself out of here, was that my body was very clearly reacting to stress on a regular basis. I started dealing with stress-induced eczema, which I've never had in my entire life. And every single time I had a deadline at work, which is every 2 to 3 weeks, it would flare significantly. And I had and have been chasing treatment for that for over a year. And it really felt a little bit like the Lord saying, it's not just in your head. Like, something's not right here. I think some of that journey has also gone along with what the Lord has taught me about, is continuing to teach me about anxiety and about trusting in Him. Prior to COVID, for instance, like, I would have never had the words to say that I struggle with anxiety here. Now I know that as much as I don't want to, that is something that the Lord has started to reveal and peel back layers of my life to go, you know what? Yeah, it's a thing. I really felt like the Lord was starting to say, oh, this is not the season to heal in. And so He has taught me so much that I really don't think I would have learned had I not been placed in a secular work environment. He's taught me so much about why and how I need to be pursuing Him on a daily basis. There's a difference between I should read my Bible, and I should pray, and God is good, and actually going, no, the Lord is faithful, and knowing that, because as perfect as we are and as imperfect as our journeys are, there's been an attempt at minimum to pursue the Lord. He walks alongside us, and He holds our hands. The people that I've met in this last season are all God's creation, and He loves them all. Whether they recognize that and reflect that back to Him or not, He loves them all. They are all God's creation. And so He is pursuing after every single one of their hearts, whether I'm involved or not.
That's so true. And that gives you the freedom to take the next step that you need to take. Yeah.
And so when it has come to the struggle of, I really want to minister to these people, but I have gotten to a point where this has not been healthy for my own life. I am so drained at the end of the day that I I got to a point where I wasn't even doing my hair or anything in the morning, which I know some people don't do anything with their hair. I didn't do my hair in the morning, and
Yeah, that's like a normal thing for
it was
you.
a
So that was a sign to you, like, hey, I'm not doing this thing that I normally do to take care of myself. So yeah, that makes sense.
And one day I was like, how much energy does it really take to do my hair? And I trained myself, and it took me 4 minutes. And if I am cutting out a 4-minute daily task that makes me feel more human,
Yes.
I don't feel like this is a healthy balance anymore.
Yes.
And so I started really, as I continued to struggle with the things, and as I continued to pray through, Lord, what do you have for me? Also pray, Lord, would you place somebody in my stead whenever it is the time to go, that they would help much better than I to show your love, and just continue pointing others towards you. Whether people listen or not, that's not our job, but at least to keep pointing. And the other side of that prayer being, Lord, if I am running too fast ahead, if I've made too many assumptions, and this is not what you have for me, and you really do want me to sit still and be in this season for longer, make that clear. Don't open the doors. Wait until the time is right. And Lord, please open the right door. Please open a door that will help me step into a season where I would love to just step into a season where I can use my resources more, to love others well, and for me and my own desires, and how I feel like the Lord has made me. Some of that is home. I would love to be able to host people. I would love to be able to say, yeah, let's go to coffee. Just even just relationally. And in this last year, I found myself on such a daily basis barely having the energy to figure out what I'm eating for dinner. Much less inviting people over, having time to go to coffee. And that's something that's honestly sad to me, because it's not what I want. It's not where my priorities lie. And so I have been praying that the Lord would open the right door when the time is right and not sooner. And that, if it's His will, Lord, may this next season be one that I can have flexibility to steward my resources in a way that that can pour into relationships more than I've been able to.
That's so. Well, Lindsey, thank you so much for just sharing about your journey and just where you're at right now, just so vulnerably and honestly. And I just pray that this just really meets whoever is listening right where they are, and that for those who are listening that are stuck in a season of being in a place where they can't serve the Lord and the people around them to the capacity that they want to be able to. I just pray that your initiative to move on to the next phase of life and start taking actions towards that can be an encouragement to them, and let them know that it's actually okay to leave the unhealthy space that they're in, and it's okay to do something for yourself and to seek something healthier. Before we head off, I would love to ask you, just for people who aren't in a season like this or who haven't experienced a season like this, how can we be empathetic and how can we help people we know who are dealing with a transition like this and a big change like this? What are some things that people have done for you that have been helpful, or maybe what are some things that you wish people would have done for you?
Yeah. I think first off, no matter how tired you are, seek Christ-like community, because you can't have people come around you if there aren't people around you. And that was a good 50% of my struggle originally. And the other thing is, with that idea, is that remember that spiritual warfare exists. And there are lies that the enemy likes to tell us. And one of those for me was, you don't have people around you. So when I believed that I didn't have people around me, I wasn't seeking help and I wasn't seeking advice because I had been convinced, or I had allowed myself to believe that lie, that no one is around me. And once I realized that that was a lie, and that I needed, with anything that I had left, to pursue Christ-like community, so many doors opened. Relationships that I had felt like, we haven't talked in like over a year, had opened back up, and just doors to new relationships like this one. Coming to a point where, like, I don't care anymore. There are people out there that God has created, and I want to learn from them. And so the first thing I would urge is to surround yourself with Christ-like community so that you have people around you that can speak into your life. But for the people who are not in this season and who want to come alongside somebody, kind of to that original point of, if you see someone kind of drifting away, you had a connection with them, like, it's okay. Like, even if they're not the first one to pick up the phone, send a message and just say, hey, how are you doing? This is a big season for you, and I wanted to check in. Be here, willing to sit and listen. Everybody has a unique story, and there is more that you have to share than you probably think. And there truly is probably no way that we will ever know what extent that might be. I mean, what we can do is be faithful with what the Lord has given us and trust that He will use it to His glory. They might just need to process something and go, this just feels so overwhelming right now, or is this normal to experience this or feel this? When you walk into a new season, it's just that, it's new. And if you haven't gone through it before, you don't have any expectations based off your own experience. Otherwise, pray. Pray for them. Pray with them. There's a difference between kind of trying to fix people's problems and sharing from your own experience. That can be a line sometimes we struggle with. But when you look back at your own life and see how the Lord has really taught you, what is something that, as you listen, what is something that is relevant? It may be, that this person feels like I did at one point, that they're struggling with community, or they could feel like they're striving for a lot of things and they're just not making any progress in their career, or in their relationships, or whatever it may be. Ultimately, we all are doing what we can to walk towards Christ and to walk with Christ. While we all have different stories, we have the same God. And He is,
Amen.
He is steadfast. And ultimately, He will use you if you ask Him to. You may not have any idea what that looks like, but that's okay. That's okay, because He is God and He is in control and He knows everything.
Well, Lindsey, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time and just the way that you just speak life so boldly in people. And I just value the wisdom that you share with me in every conversation that we have. And I'm so grateful that now more people are going to get to hear about your experiences and just what the Lord has taught you and brought you through. So, yeah, thanks for being on the Pinkfish podcast.
Thank you, Haley. I really enjoyed this time.
Thank you for listening to the Pinkfish podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to give it a like, a thumbs up, subscribe, share, and all the things. I pray this episode has just met you right where you are and has encouraged you to draw closer to the Lord. Have a great rest of your day, friend.